Enter, rejoice, and log in. Enter, rejoice, and log in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and log in.
Good morning, folks. Several years ago, I officiated at the memorial service for a woman named Thelma Silsby. As part of that service, her son Brad shared several stories with us about her life, and he gave me permission to share one of those with whoever I might find could benefit from it in the future. So this morning, I'm going to share that particular story with you. Way back before they were even married, Brad's parents, Thelma and Roger, used to love to go sailing. And there was one particular day when they were out on the water together in a boat with Thelma's father. Now, Roger was at the tiller. He was steering the boat. But as they made their way south towards the Cape Cod Canal, he realized that something was wrong. They must have hit some rock under the waves or something, because the tiller wasn't working. Maybe it was broken in some way. He wasn't really in control of the boat anymore. Trying to stay calm, he motioned Thelma's father over to him, and he quietly explained the situation. He asked him to take his place at the tiller. He was going to go to the sails, try to tack to safety, but whatever you do, don't let on that there's a problem. We don't want to worry Thelma. So the two men conspired together to keep from worrying her, and eventually it looked like they were going to make it to a safe place where they could stop and get some help. And then Thelma's father realized something. He hadn't seen Thelma in a while. Where could she be? Well, the where, as it turns out, was that she was below decks. You see, that broken tiller wasn't the only problem that their little boat had. They were also taking on water, and she was down there running a pump, trying to make sure that they didn't sink entirely, but she was too concerned about the men up above deck. She didn't want to worry them, so she kept the problem to herself. So often in life, we can make the mistake of assuming that my troubles are just going to worry you too much if I share them with you. But the truth is that while I'm dealing with my own troubles and you're struggling with your particular concerns, all of our problems, all of the things that are standing in our way are actually bound up together because our fates are inextricably combined. We are all in the same boat. And that is what brings us together this morning, to set aside the illusion of our separateness for a little bit of time, to be reminded that your life touches mine as much as my life touches yours. So come, let us sail towards meaning. And if our boat should spring a leak, then we will patch it together.
We light this flame as a symbol of new life, enlightening our way as a symbol of the warmth in every human heart.
Let the lighting of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of hope, of peace, of love. May we share that light with all people.
Good morning. I am Marie Luna, your Director of Congregational Life. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It is good to be together, even in this online format. If you are joining us from another Unitarian Universalist congregation, welcome. If this is your first time visiting the fellowship, I want to extend you a special welcome. I want to help you find out more about our fellowship. Please send me a note. I will put my email address in the chat box. We have a lot going on here in this virtual world. Today's service is being led and supported by Reverend Leah Ungiri, our Associate Minister, Steve Seek, our Music Director, our wonderful musicians and singers, Adam Robinson, our AV Tech, and today we welcome a special guest minister to our virtual pulpit, the Reverend Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson. A lifelong Unitarian Universalist, Reverend Kelly has been the minister of the First Parish Church in Beverly, Massachusetts since 2010. Before coming to First Parish, he served as a hospital chaplain and as a part-time parish minister in Western New York State. We were very fortunate to have Kelly lead one of our Wellspring Wednesday programs earlier this year, so he might seem familiar to you. Welcome to Kelly, and thank you to everyone who has made this morning's service possible. This year, we are focusing on a theme of growing resilience. We're digging into what it means to grow ourselves and our community to be sources of life, even when things get tough. Right now, we're in the weeks of our creativity theme. Thank you for joining us as we practice being a community of creativity, thinking outside the box and bringing beauty into our world. It is time now to settle into your space, wherever you are, to take a deep breath and be present to this time together, even from afar.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be
Hello again, friends. I'm so glad to be with you this morning, particularly with the young folks among us, those young of body and young of spirit. I've been told that often in your worship, you get to gather around what's called a wonder box and explore whatever it is that happens to be inside that wonderful box on a particular morning. Now, I don't have a wonder box, unfortunately, but until I can get one, I do have this relatively nifty bag. And it's got something inside it. It's not sharp, doesn't crunch. It is a little hard to press in on. If you have a guess about what's in this bag, maybe you could put it in the chat. That'd be fun. But I'm kind of curious too, so I'm going to find out what's in this bag. Oh, I see. All right. It was a penguin. If you guessed a penguin, that was a good guess. This penguin reminds me of a story that comes from an ancient Persian poem, the translated name of which is called The Conference of the Birds. So this story, all the birds in the entire world, so that must include penguins, right? All the birds in the entire world gathered together to have a great conference, a great big meeting. They were going to decide together who should be their king. Now, every bird had a different opinion about who should be the king. The owl said the king must be wise. The dove said the king must be gentle. The hawk said the king must be powerful. The magpie said the king must be very good at finding shiny things on the ground. And the penguin said the king must be very good at swimming. But they could not agree on exactly how to determine who would be the king. And so one bird finally spoke up. This was a bird called the hoopoe bird. The hoopoe bird is a real type of bird, I assure you. And it said, far away from here, far away, a great distance, there is a bird that is said to be all of these things, the most wise, the most gentle, the most powerful, the best at finding shiny objects, and even the best at swimming. The bird is called the simurgh, and if we travel together, perhaps we can reach the place where it lives, and then the simurgh can be our king. So the birds thought this was a pretty good plan, and they all got together and they went on a long journey through the sky, over land, over sea. Now, all the birds had different capabilities, just as we saw. Some were wise, some were strong, some were fast, but none of them had all of those capacities at once. So you had the problem where, for instance, if they had to fly to get there, well, there are some birds that don't actually fly, do they? But they found that they could help each other out. So the penguin got a ride with the condor and a couple of the other birds. And then when they reached a place where they were all very hungry and famished, looking for food, well, the birds among them who were the best at finding food when they really needed it, they found enough so that everyone could eat together. And they passed through a place where it was very, very cold, and some of the birds didn't know if they could make it. But there were other birds who kind of know exactly what to do when it's really, really cold, and they taught their sibling birds exactly what they needed to do to get through the really cold part of the journey and get to the other end where it was warm again. And finally, after a long time of traveling together and helping one another when they needed it, they reached a beautiful lake at the foot of the mountains. And this lake had incredibly clear water. It reflected the sky almost perfectly, but there was no sign of this great bird called the simurgh. They looked at the hoopoe and asked, "Well, where is it?" The hoopoe went to the edge of the lake, and she looked into the water and stared for a long moment. And eventually, she stared so long that some of the other birds got curious. Well, what's that? What's that? What's the hoopoe's looking at? And they went and they looked into the lake as well. What they saw there was their own beautiful self reflected back. Not just them, but once all of the birds had clustered around the outside of the lake, they could see themselves, but also all of their compatriots, all their siblings, all the other birds who had traveled so far with them, had been through so much together. They could see the whole beautiful assembly of them. And by this, the birds learned that they did not need one king to rule over them. Rather, they needed each other to share in the work, to help when help was needed, to teach what they knew, and to learn together. So the birds, to this day, do not have a king. Now, there are many different morals that we might take away from this story. I won't tell you that you have to pick just one. Maybe you'd like to discuss later today or later this week with somebody in your household or just anybody that you care about what it is that you take from this story. But one of the things that I take from this story, is that we are greater when we're together than we are when we're apart. And sometimes it can be attractive to imagine that one person, one bird, one simurgh is going to come and fix all of our problems. But together, maybe we could work on our problems instead.
Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet will be, the goal may ever lead us on, the will to reach it makes us free.
Some years ago, I attended a meeting of the building committee for the congregation that I serve. At that particular meeting, we talked about a bit of repair work that needed to be done on the light fixtures that hang way up above the front doors of our meeting house. The lights are powerful enough and set up high enough that fixing them was more complicated than grabbing a footstool and a few fresh 40-watt bulbs. As always, that capable and dedicated band of volunteers were on the case, and a plan to effect the needed repair was made without incident or delay. Still, I could not help musing to myself on the obvious question that the situation posed. How many Unitarian Universalists does it take to change a light bulb? I've heard a number of punchlines to match this setup. You may feel invited to share your own with each other at coffee hour. The particular one I have in mind goes like this. It takes 20 UUs to change a light bulb, 7 to form a committee to discuss the ecological implications of compact fluorescent versus incandescent bulbs, 6 to form a committee to discuss labor practices, 6 on the aesthetics committee to discuss the exact tint and wattage, and 1 who goes ahead and does it without consulting anyone else. We Unitarian Universalists do have a penchant for forming committees. Like potluck suppers, good coffee, and the absence of hell, doing work by committee is one of the hallmarks of our spiritual communities. Out there in the larger world, there is a pernicious idea that giving any sort of task to a committee of people is at best a waste of time, and at worst, a way of ensuring that no one will be satisfied with the result. The saying goes that a camel is a horse designed by committee. This is supposed to be a hit against both committees and camels, presumably by someone who has never tried to cross a desert on horseback. Now, there are some real reasons for this bad reputation. In modern business and in government, committees are sometimes formed with the express purpose of failure, a way to appear to be addressing a problem while ensuring that no one will have the power or collective will to solve it. More often, a committee of public officials or corporate employees is not intended to fail, but it is destined in that direction, because the rules and the process that govern it completely overwhelm the purpose it was meant to serve. And so, the very idea of the committee has become associated with dysfunctional bureaucracy. The science fiction author Stanislaw Lem, who wrote in the context of communist Poland, had much to say about bureaucracies run on broken wheels. In the first chapter of his novel, The Starr Diaries, the protagonist, Ijon Tichy, finds himself careening through space in a rocket ship with a broken rudder. Passing through a region known for its strange, time-distorting vortices, Tichy is faced with an unusual problem. he keeps running into himself. As days and weeks bend and fold back on each other, the rocket ship becomes more and more crowded with past and future versions of the hapless pilot. Unfortunately, Tishy finds that he and his selves from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and points beyond, and before, do not get along very well. Whenever they meet, he and his doppelgangers have an argument over who should be the one to fix the broken rudder. They squabble over the spacesuit needed to do the job, or they come to blows over the ship's dwindling supply of chocolate. Eventually, so many copies of the same person from different times have piled up in one place that the group resorts to parliamentary procedure to establish some order to things. The oldest of them, who claimed to be from next year, was elected chairman by popular acclaim. And, as Lem writes, we then appointed an elective committee, a nominating committee, and a committee for new business, and 4 of us from next month were made sergeants at arms. Finally, there seems to be some possibility of cooperation, rather than Tishy's working constantly against himself. But things do not go as planned. New wrinkles in time keep changing the size of the group, and so the bylaws must be constantly revised to set new requirements for quorum and a new slate of officers chosen to replace the ones that have disappeared. The disruption in time grows more serious as Tishies from far in the past and future, children and very old men, begin to arrive. The problem is finally solved only when 2 of the youngest Tishies sneak off while their grown-up versions are arguing and both climb into the only spacesuit, one boy standing on the other's shoulders. Together, they repair the rudder, and the population of the rocket goes back down to just 1, Ijan Tishy, no longer lost in time. This is the common perception of what committees are all about: wasting time with discussion while someone else shows the courage to act decisively. Friends, I am here to tell you that that perception is wrong. There are many ways to misuse and abuse the idea of the committee, as with any other scheme for organizing human beings. But the solution to the perversion of an ideal is not to abandon it, but to redeem it. Working and making decisions together is fundamental to who we are and what we are about as Unitarian Universalists. In fact, it is essential to our collective salvation. Ours is a free faith. It cannot be established in the heart or the mind by coercion, nor would it seek to be. And our meeting houses are assemblies of equals. There is no spiritual hierarchy accepted here, no division between the reprobate and the elect. We pursue democracy with reverence and treat the elements of its practice as sacraments. We have inherited this attitude in large part from the Puritan ancestors who founded many of the congregations that first became Unitarian on this continent. Puritanism in America is associated with many characteristics that we no longer admire: humorlessness, doctrinal rigidity, abject confusion between church and state. And of course, the whole witch trial business, which still drives the annual economy of Salem, Massachusetts, which is the next town over from where I live. But the Puritans, who variously fled and were expelled from the Church of England in the 1500s and 1600s, formed their own religious communities on staunchly egalitarian ideals, at least at first. In framing the Puritan influence on the system of government in the United States, the historian A.S.P. Woodhouse has said that the congregation was the school of democracy. There, the humblest member might hear and join in the debate, might witness the discovery of the natural leader, and participate in the curious process by which there emerges from the clash of many minds a vision clearer and to determination wiser than any single mind could achieve. It is here, in the basic work of struggling to live with one another in the democratic spirit, that our penchant for committees first emerges. A committee is a group of people who work together with a common purpose. Usually they are a subset of some larger grouping, a business, legislature, or in our case, a congregation. But always, and this is a critical and tragically overlooked element, always they are gatherings of equals. There may be different roles and responsibilities in the group, but in order to be effective, everyone involved must be free to contribute what they have to offer. When I was a teenage Unitarian Universalist, I served on my congregation's religious education committee. We met every month over a lit chalice and a home-baked snack. The congregation had a practice begun during the AIDS pandemic of distributing free condoms in all of its restrooms. Sometimes during our committee meetings, we would prepare little packets containing one condom, one set of instructions, and one information sheet on how to help prevent sexually transmitted infections. I remember folding the sheet of paper and packing everything into that little sealable plastic bag while we talked about curricula and teacher training. I had been a part of that congregation my whole life up to that point, but serving on that committee was what really made me feel like a member. The group depended on each of us working hard, thinking carefully, and bringing our gifts to the situation at hand. Knowing that my contribution mattered gave me confidence. It made me care more. It made me want to do more. It was good for my soul. Nearly all religions affirm that we need to gather together into groups in order to best practice our faith, whatever faith that might be. Likely you have heard before the affirmation from the Christian tradition, "Wherever 3 or more are gathered together in my name, there will I be also." In Judaism, a minyan, a sort of spiritual quorum, is required in order to properly perform many prayers and rites. Some number of worshipers, in most cases 10, is required in order to pray in public or to bless a wedding, for instance. There are certain levels of holiness that no one person can reach all on their own. There's actually a story from the Jewish tradition that lifts up the power of collective decision-making to an almost shocking degree. It's said a little less than 2,000 years ago. The Sanhedrin, the Council of Legal Authorities, it wouldn't be unfair to call them a committee of judges for religious matters, were debating a small point of law, and one of them, Rabbi Eliezer, found himself at odds with the others. Outvoted by his fellow sages, Eliezer declared, "If it is as I say, let this carob tree prove it." The tree immediately uprooted itself, flying through the air and out of the garden where it had been planted. But the other teachers were not impressed. "No proof can be brought from a carob tree," they replied. Rabbi Eliezer continued, "If it is as I say, let this stream of water prove it." And the stream began to flow backwards. His fellow rabbis remained adamant. No proof could be brought from a stream either. "If it is as I say, let the walls of the meeting house prove it," he declared. And the building around them began to quake. Another sage leapt up to rebuke the walls, saying, "When scholars engage in a legal dispute, what is your relevance?" The trembling stopped, but the argument continued. Finally, Rabbi Eliezer proclaimed, "If it is as I say, let it be proved from heaven." And there came a great voice from on high, crying out, "Why do you dispute with Rabbi Eliezer? All matters of the law are just as he says." But Rabbi Joshua responded, "The law is not in heaven." The responsibility of that legal ruling fell to the judges in that room and to no one and nothing else. Not even the voice of the Holy One had standing to contradict the determination of the court. Our own tradition as Unitarian Universalists has a particular take on this. James Luther Adams, one of our great theologians of the last century, put it something like this: simply to be good as individuals is not enough. Goodness in a person is never fully realized. It cannot reach its greatest height until it has been turned into some collective good. We may be gentle and patient and wise and kind, but unless we have pooled those qualities with others, working together to build kind institutions and wise organizations, we will be neglecting the deep calling of our faith. Unitarian Universalism is not a religion of small ambitions. The purpose of our tradition is to save the world, not from a fiery afterlife or an angry God, but from meaninglessness and despair, and all the anguish and injustice wrought by humans treating other human beings inhumanly. James Luther Adams used to tell a story about a time during the Civil Rights era when he was a member of the Board of Trustees of the First Unitarian Church in Chicago. There was another member on that board who complained often that their minister's preaching spent too much time on racial issues. It was too political, ought to be more realistic. Realism seemed to be a euphemism for not making trouble, or trying to drum up sympathy for those people. One night at a board meeting, this man started into it again, and the rest of the group gave it right back to him. Someone challenged him to explain what the purpose of a church was. After attacks and defenses and dodging the question and trying to beg off, by the time it had gotten to be 1 a.m, as Adams puts it, the man became so fatigued that the Holy Spirit took charge. His final answer was, "The purpose of a church is to get a hold of people like me and change them." The purpose of a congregation is to get hold of people like me and you, and you, and you, and you, all you separate Zoom windows, and change us. Help us move from what we are to what we can be. And we seek to get a hold not just of the people already in here, not just to be looking always and only inside, but to reach out to people beyond our walls as well. As we change ourselves, we also change the world. And as we change the world, we change ourselves anew. In the time-twisted story of Ijon Tichy, when the rocket was damaged and hurtling through space and all his older selves were so busy arguing pointlessly, it was 2 of the youngest who snuck off and fixed the problem on their own. But I do not take that as a condemnation of collective decision-making. It took 2 of them working together to fix the ship. So the moral is not the stagnating influence of public debate, but the saving power of the committee.
Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and
I invite you now to join me in an attitude of meditation and of prayer. Surrounded by and woven within the sacred mystery of existence, let us give thanks for this day and this hour, and for the grace and the beauty of the sun in the sky, the air in our lungs, the blood in our veins, and the earth beneath our feet. We come seeking solace and respite from the trials of life, and the strength and courage to confront what is wrong in our world and in ourselves. Together may we yearn for understanding of the cosmos and our place in it, for wonder which surpasses understanding, and for loving kindness which transcends even wonder. Amidst all this yearning and seeking, all the struggles and celebrations of life, we invite you now to type into the chat box any personal news you might wish to share with this community so we can hold space with you as we worship. If you would like to connect further with Reverend Leah or a care team member, please let her know directly. You can still submit joys and concerns on the fellowship's website or by emailing Reverend Leah or any member of the fellowship's staff to be included in the weekly email. Aware now and moved by the deep well of feeling that touches each of our hearts, let us breathe into this shared silence and then join in a sung response.
And we believe in life, and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
This month's focus is on creativity, the capacity to invent, imagine, and create. Here in the context of religious community, it means particularly to co-create, not just what each of us alone might do, but what we can create when we each cooperate to make something bigger than ourselves. So now, as we take part in our morning offering, please consider what the spirit of creation and generosity is calling for you to do. How might you help create that which you wish to see in the world? Just because our offerings are virtual, they are no less real. This congregation needs your support now as much as it ever has before. I know that in this, as in any other gathering, there are those among us who are in need, and your community is here to help. It is one of the things congregations exist for, to be here for you when you need them. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Reverend Christina, Reverend Leah, or to intern minister Allie if you are in need of financial or emotional support, so they can offer help. I also want to honor those among us who have been left relatively unscathed by the crises of recent months and have resources to share. Like many organizations, your fellowship was hit financially by the pandemic, and so I want to encourage you to continue to give or to begin to do so if you never have, so that your collective ministry might be able to continue and flourish for the months and years to come. As you hear these words from Anne, please think about why you are a part of the fellowship and why you give. And then, please do. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Fisher. My family has been coming to the fellowship since 2016. Before finding the fellowship, I was a member of a church connected to the Catholic school where I taught. I did not give regularly. I would get those little envelopes in the mail once a year and guiltily throw them away. I was a Catholic school teacher. I didn't have any extra. When Justin and I got married and moved to Little Chute, we attempted to stay connected to that church, and it worked for a while. Then in 2013, we tried out a few other churches in this area. We even came here when my daughter was about 3 weeks old, and even though we enjoyed the service that day, I wasn't ready to not be Catholic. I felt like I needed to be Catholic. A few years later, after some discussions with my mom and Justin, and some thinking about what we wanted to teach our children, Justin and I decided to come check out the fellowship again. And this time, we were ready for the amazing welcome that we felt. Marie was so patient with us as we nervously checked out the nursery. And the welcome packet that we received showcased all the wonderful opportunities for involvement here. After coming for a few months, we knew that this was a community that we wanted to be a part of. When we joined and were given our first pledge card, I was nervous. I knew that adding in an extra monthly expense would mean rearranging some things in our budget. However, we were both so hopeful about the ways in which the fellowship could impact not only our lives, but the greater community. And we wanted to give what we could. So we carefully considered what to give and where in the budget to take it from. We really love that the fellowship offers so much to so many and are happy to be a part of that. Our pledge to the fellowship has increased each year, as has our participation in and love for this community. When the pandemic started, we were so grateful that the fellowship found creative ways to connect, even from a distance. Unfortunately, we were able to continue our contributions, and this year we'll be raising our pledge again. I know we'll be turning in our pledge form early, before February 28th, because we want to be entered into the prize drawing twice. As a member of the stewardship team, I need to remind you that the goal for our pledge campaign is 100% participation. This means we want every household to complete and turn in their pledge form. A pledge of any size is considered participation. So that could mean pledging $0 and asking for a pledge waiver, or it could mean pledging more than $10,000, whatever is right for your household. Your pledge, in whatever amount is right for you, helps the fellowship flourish and grow.
We are the ones, we've been waiting. 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 We are the ones,
As we extinguish this flame, let us go our ways with hope in our hearts, with our spirits renewed, and with a deeper understanding of life's mystery. Let us carry the light of compassion and commitment to build a better world.
After our closing words, we will be having small breakout groups for conversation. In a moment, we will hear a short postlude song. If you do not want to participate in any small group conversations, then please use that postlude music time to log off and leave this Zoom meeting. If you choose to stay, you will be invited to choose your own breakout group on Zoom. One option will be for newcomers to join with the Director of Congregational Life, Marie Luna, in a special newcomer group. Another group will be led by me, and yet another group will be led by Reverend Leah. And then one more group will just be for informal, unmoderated chit-chat. You will see an option to choose your breakout room. You might need to click on the box with 4 squares to choose, or you might need to click the 3 dots that says More. Choose which group you'd like to attend by hovering over the choice with your cursor, and the word Join should pop up. Click that. If none of this works, don't worry. We'll do our best to move you to the group of your choice, so just hang tight, stay there. Breathe. You're being held. Please be patient, as we are all new to this, every one of us, and some bugs might need to be worked out. And so, with that, go in resilience, growing in strength. Go in creativity, in beauty and innovation. Go in peace, knowing we embrace each other, even now, from a distance.